Hey friends, welcome back. Ronan here with 3 tips today for the beginner jazz guitar student. Now, there's a lot of people on the internet already telling you what to do, what to not do, and though I hate to be another one of those voices, I really do think that these 3 tips, if you take them into consideration, will help you progress a lot more quickly than focusing on things like learning a lot of scales, learning a lot of extra fancy stuff. So we're gonna stick to the nuts and bolts today and get started with tip number 1. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. It really helps me out. Thanks a lot. For tip number 1, I'm not gonna suggest you learn all your modes or learn your 2-5-1 licks. I'm gonna suggest that you really work on your time. As a guitarist, that means having good time when comping and playing rhythm guitar, and having good time when taking a solo or playing a melody. The truth is, more experienced musicians are happy to take on less experienced players as long as those players have good time and good feel and make the rest of the band sound good. A musician that has bad time is dead weight and creates a weak link between the rest of the band that just drags everything down. Even if you're not playing the most amazing solos or you hit a brown note every once in a while, if you play with good time, people will want to play with you no matter where you're at in your journey. Here are a couple ways that I work on this as a guitarist. The easiest way to work on your feel is to get one of these, an analog metronome, and put the metronome on all 4s. So I'm going to put it on 120 BPM and it's going to click on every quarter note. I'm going to comp using a 4 on the floor Freddie Green style comping, which isn't just for big band, it's actually amazing also for just duo or playing when there's not a rhythm section behind you. 1, 2, 3. Beginners tend to get a little bit carried away with sophistication and syncopation. So the goal of this exercise is going to be able to phrase on beat 1. Starting phrases on beat 1 and ending them on beat 1 to really drive home that quarter note and the sense that we know exactly where we are in the measure. 1, 2, 3. That was a clear example of using really understandable and simple rhythmic language that is really clear to the rest of the band and makes it easier for them to support you. It also gives the sense that you're interested in being a part of the rhythm section even when you're a soloist. Often beginners, because of nerves and because of wanting to do a good job, kind of isolate themselves and kind of shrink and become immersed only in their own little world, and then the rhythm section is left, hanging out to dry. It'll really go a long way, and people will want to play with you if they sense that during your solo you're still communicating with them and you're using them as an inspiration for your solo. And then they can use your solo as an inspiration for their comping and for their rhythm section interplay. Tip number 2 is to only use your RealBook or the iRealB app in case of emergency. I would avoid it altogether if possible. What will happen is you'll be forced to memorize more tunes, and you'll be forced to develop your own songbook of songs that you like. Out of all the songs you could play, you'll find songs that resonate with you, or the melody that you like, or specific changes that you like to play over a song. You'll also have to consult recordings more to actually learn the song, as opposed to just reading it every time that you want to play it. For the first couple years of learning jazz, I carried around a RealBook everywhere, and when I got to music school, I actually didn't know that many tunes. I maybe knew 1 or 2 songs, really, from memory. When I got rid of my RealBook at the request of one of my teachers, I started being able to memorize and hold a bunch more songs in my head that then made it so I felt more comfortable on the bandstand and in jam sessions with other musicians. This also encourages an oral tradition between musicians where musicians teach each other songs through a verbal story. Like, okay, the song starts on 1, then it goes to 4, and then the bridge goes to the major 3 key, right? It encourages discussion and illustration of the song through words, as opposed to just handing someone a piece of paper and then they're just, looking at the piece of paper the whole time you're playing. It opens up your ears, and yes, it is a little bit scary at first because when you're just used to looking at the page, it feels safer. But even if you forget chord changes, the next time around in the chorus, you'll get it. Or you can ask the musician, hey, what happens at this part? It's all part of the oral tradition of jazz music. If you're always looking at the page or carrying around a book, you're missing a huge opportunity to develop your ears, work on memorizing tunes, and interacting with the music in a way more dynamic way. Tip number 3 is not to worry about the word improvisation. Improvisation is a loaded word that, even among seasoned professionals, has a different meaning to everybody. For me, I treat jazz like a language. I improvise with language. I improvise with the English language. I take little bits of vocabulary, of words, sentences, of expressions, and I combine them in ways that make sense and that communicate something. Jazz is the same way. It can be improvisatory, but really at its root, it's learning a language. My advice to you would be to look for vocabulary, learn for licks, learn for patterns. There's nothing wrong with that. But then what you do with them has to be musical. If you're going to learn a lick and then just plug it in without listening to what the band is doing or without a musical attention, that's going to sound bad. However, those same licks, when used with intuition and with feel, can sound amazing. That's actually the whole point, I think. Instead of going to these 101 jazz licks or these 251 lick dictionaries, get to know your favorite recordings and your favorite solos and digest little pieces of them. You don't have to take a whole transcription at first. Just take one little phrase that Chet Baker or Miles Davis or John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins, all these greats, you just take one little phrase and learn the hell out of it. Then it'll come out and you're playing, and even though you might still be playing a lick and it's not your own spontaneous invention, it'll still sound like you because everything that comes through you will inevitably sound like you. There's a little bit too much emphasis on this romanticized notion of spontaneity and improvisation. The spontaneity comes from the listening and the adapting to the other musicians in the band. It doesn't come from the actual material that you play. The material is actually fairly similar from song to song, right? I mean, I have a limited vocabulary of things and techniques that I use, but I try and be as inventive and adaptable to the surroundings as I can so that the music feels fresh. If this was helpful for you, please subscribe. It really means a lot. As a former beginner, I wish I'd taken a lot of this information to heart a lot sooner, but as someone that got around to it eventually, I can tell you it'll really help you. So it's not too late to start. Take care and see you next time.